Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are digging into the surprisingly real story behind Netflix, and we're going straight to the source, Marc Randolph's memoir, which tells a story that's probably not the one you think you know. All right, let's get into it.
This phrase. You've heard it, right? It's the go-to response from people who are comfortable, the ones who see a new idea and just shut it down. It sounds like a brick wall, a dead end.
But what if it isn't? What if that phrase is actually a starting line? This is really the heart of the Netflix story. How you can hear those four little words, and instead of hitting the brakes, you see a green light.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to bust the biggest myth of all, this idea of a single genius moment. The story of Netflix isn't about a light bulb suddenly flashing on. The reality is way messier, way more interesting, and honestly, way more useful for the rest of us. You know, we all have this picture in our heads of how success happens, right? A perfect idea just pops into someone's head and boom, overnight success. But the actual Netflix story, man, it was a messy, bumpy road of constant testing and, yeah, a lot of failure. The key here is that it was built on adapting to reality, not on some brilliant prediction. So where did it all start? Well, not in some fancy boardroom, but in a car. The co-founders, Marc Randolph and Reed Hastings, spent months carpooling together, and they just throw out dozens of business ideas, everything from personalized shampoo to custom dog food. And their number one goal was actually to kill the bad ideas as fast as they possibly could.
And then, eventually, this one idea came up. Now you have to put yourself back in that time. Blockbuster was king. Going to the video store was just what you did. So the idea of renting a movie online and getting it, wait for it, in the mail, it sounded ridiculous, slow, inconvenient, and just totally impractical.
And yep, you guessed it, that's exactly what they heard. From pretty much everyone, friends, family, investors, the verdict was in. That will never work. The idea was dead on arrival. But Marc Randolph, he had a different way of thinking.
Instead of wasting his breath arguing or writing up some 100-page business plan to convince people, he believed in one simple thing. Just test it. Find out if the idea could even survive contact with the real world.
And this wasn't some complex market analysis. It was about as low-tech as you can get. He just took a DVD, stuck it in a regular envelope, and mailed it to his own house. The big question was, could a flimsy little plastic disc even survive the journey through the U.S. postal system? Turns out, it could. And this right here is one of the absolute core lessons from the book. That one tiny piece of real-world data, a DVD showing up in a mailbox, playable, was worth more than 1,000 expert opinions saying it was impossible. It proved the concept wasn't a complete fantasy. Okay, so the DVD didn't break. Great. But that was just step one on a very long and bumpy road. Let's talk about the launch, because let's be real. The early days of Netflix were a total grind, full of constant problems.
I mean, the website was a mess, they hardly had any movies to rent, customers were just confused by the whole thing, and growth was painfully slow. But here's the key. The team didn't see these as failures. They saw them as clues. They were valuable pieces of feedback from the real world.
So how did they get those clues? By doing something pretty radical. They listened. Marc Randolph made a point of personally answering customer service calls and emails. He literally picked up the phone himself for hours, not to argue or make excuses, but just to hear what people were so frustrated about. And that's where the biggest breakthroughs came from.
See, their first business model was basically just a Blockbuster clone. You rented a movie, and if you were late, bam, you got hit with these awful late fees that everybody hated. So listening to all that frustration, they took a huge gamble. They pivoted to a flat monthly subscription with absolutely no late fees. It was a massive risk, but it was born directly from customer pain.
And you know, that whole idea of listening, it brings us to maybe the most legendary story in the whole book. It's this incredible cautionary tale about what happens when a company stops listening. I'm talking, of course, about the meeting with Blockbuster.
So picture this. The tiny, scrappy, struggling Netflix team flies down to Blockbuster's massive headquarters. They lay it all out, and they offer to sell the entire company for $50 million. And the Blockbuster execs, they didn't just say no, they literally laughed them out of the room. And that moment, right there, that's the whole Blockbuster lesson in a nutshell. Big companies don't usually fail because they run out of money or resources. They fail because they get arrogant. They lose their curiosity and their humility, and they stop being able to imagine a world that's different from the one they already dominate. So all of this boils down to what Randolph calls the Netflix method. It's this really powerful set of beliefs. 1, your first ideas, they're probably wrong. 2, failing early isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's necessary for learning. 3, listening to your customers will always beat trying to predict the future. 4, the speed at which you learn is your biggest advantage. And maybe most important of all, 5, ego is the #1 enemy of innovation.
All right, so when you put it all together, this whole method, this incredible story, it brings us right back to where we started, to that phrase. And now we can see what "that will never work" really means.
What's so great about the real Netflix story is that it takes the idea of genius completely off the table. It's not about some magical gift only a few people have. It's a practical roadmap that, honestly, anyone can follow. It shows that success isn't about being right from the start. It's about having a process to find out what's right.
And that brings us to the big final idea, the thing to really take away from all this. Those words, "that will never work," they aren't a red light. They aren't a stop sign. They are an invitation to run that first simple experiment and prove them wrong. So that's the question this whole story leaves us with, right? For you, personally. We all have those crazy ideas, the ones people would probably laugh at. After hearing all this, what's the one tiny, simple first test you could run on yours?